unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome and happy hump day. You can just send your friends a camel emoji. Send them one with one hump or two humps. And underneath it, write happy hump day. You'll be so popular. You're welcome. No update from my cat today who just lazed in the window. Here's some of what's coming up on tonight's show. It's Wednesday night, which means it's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. The world's only mental health segment in all of radio intended for Thursday nights that airs on Wednesdays. And on tonight's show, a narcissist's prayer. That's right, the common script anyone that you deal with who's a narcissist will undoubtedly follow. We'll chat about strategies for dealing with a narcissistic ex, boss, sibling, parent, friend, well, maybe ex-friend. And I know those tips will be helpful for you. After that, a growing trend in adults who never want children. That's right, the number of people who want to be child-free and intend on being child-free for their entire life is increasing. Year on year, a little bit more, a little bit more. We'll dig into why that is. Common stereotypes that people have, hopefully you don't have them, and why being child-free is a fine choice, he said into his microphone, knowing that he doesn't have kids and is almost 40. All right, that's some of what you'll hear tonight. Let's dive into the show.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
So if you were in Silicon Valley this weekend, the land of Teslas, 19-year-olds with crypto fortunes, and techie CEOs who looked like they were grown in vats, and you were crossing the street and pressed the crosswalk button, trying to cross the street like a normal pre-singularity human, instead of a poetic chirp coming out of the attached speaker or a robotic wait to cross, you would get a voice that sounded suspiciously like Mark Zuckerberg, telling you it's normal to feel violated by AI as it's forcefully inserted into every facet of your life. Which, first of all, is a sentence I've only ever heard in tech conferences or at a very bad wrong date. In short, if you were crossing the road in Palo Alto, where Meta or Facebook is headquartered, here's what you would hear.
Wait. Hi, this is Mark Zuckerberg, but real ones call me the Zuck. It's normal to feel uncomfortable or even violated as we forcefully insert AI into every facet of your conscious experience. And I just want to assure you, you don't need to worry because there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. Anyway, see ya.
Now, this wasn't just one rogue crosswalk. No, these things popped up in cities all around the San Francisco Bay Area, all around Silicon Valley. Basically, all the places where your Uber driver has a startup and your barista is working on nuclear fission on the side. Or fusion. I always get those two mixed up. So how did this all happen? Probably a hacker, a hilarious hacker, or just someone who knew how to mess with the crosswalk speaker system. Turns out these things aren't super high-tech. If you can get into the box or connect to it wirelessly, turns out you can upload whatever audio you want. And dystopian deepfake AI audio clips of everyone's favorite or not so favorite tech CEOs, well, that was a great idea and high comedy, if a little bit illegal. But in short, it was a hacker swapping out a ringtone, but for a button that tells you when to cross the street. Anyway, walk down the street a little further, and it's not Zuckerberg, but Musk, welcoming you to Palo Alto. But not just any welcome. No, he's sort of doing stand-up. Existential, unhinged, billionaire stand-up. Deepfake Musk was cracking jokes to walkers like this. People say cancer is bad, but have you tried being cancer? And honestly, no, but thank you for the suggestion. Here's another one.
Hi, I'm Eli. Can we be friends? Will you be my friend? I'll give you a Cybertruck, I promise. Okay, look, you don't know the level of depravity I would stoop to just for a crumb of approval. I mean, let's be real. It's not like I had any moral convictions to begin with, right?
That's right, Elon Musk offering you a Cybertruck if only you'll be his friend, which honestly is the saddest barter I've ever heard. It's like crying out, Please like me. Here's an angular tank that doesn't run well with doors that won't open. Meanwhile, back to near Meta headquarters, with that voice identifying as Zuck, crosswalks brag about undermining democracy and cooking your grandparents' brain with AI slop, which is both deeply disturbing and a pretty accurate mission statement by Facebook. Now don't worry, the cities with these crosswalks affected are on it, I'm sure. Palo Alto says they've shut down the feature at 12 intersections, which surprisingly is a line from the new Blade Runner reboot, probably. And Redwood City is evaluating ways to strengthen system protections on crosswalks, which is government speak for, we've Googled how to fix the problem and we're working on it. Anyway, the buttons are all turned off now, which means for the first time in history, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have officially been silenced, even if it's a public vandalism deepfake AI version of them. That is, until at least someone hacks a vending machine to whisper sweet dystopian nothings while it eats your change. But anyway, in short, the moral of the story, if your crosswalk button starts promising you a Neuralink in exchange for deep loyalty, maybe just wait for the green light and move on. For all you agnostics out there, you thought you were playing it safe, not picking a side between being a believer and an atheist. And maybe you were, but it turns out agnostics have all kinds of problems, psychological ones. A new study says agnostics aren't just undecided about God, the big question, they're indecisive about everything. They're more neurotic, more anxious, and more likely to stare at 73 kinds of peanut butter for 3 hours before leaving the store with hummus and self-doubt. Compared to atheists and Christians, agnostics are basically the people at the buffet who never get a plate. Legend has it that an agnostic went to a buffet and is still circling to this day thinking, but what if I want fruit, shrimp, and meatballs? Researchers looked at over 300 adults and found that agnostics score higher on neuroticism, indecisiveness, and maximizing, which is the official psychology term for being unable to make a decision because you're more worried there's a better option out there. It's not that the agnostics they looked at in the study didn't know what they wanted. It's that they were haunted by the idea that they might want something else more later on. Now, Christians tended to rate themselves as more kind and giving. Atheists rated themselves as more intelligent and logical. That follows. But agnostics, they didn't rate themselves as better than anyone at anything, which is either a beautiful show of humility or just more indecision. Am I better? Am I worse? Am I equal? Should I say something? Should I nod? Classic agnostic move. Pick a lane. Now, one of the researchers, I imagine, because I'm making this up, looked up from the data and whispered, my goodness, we've discovered the spiritual essence of the person who rereads a restaurant menu after ordering. That never happened. And it turns out indecisiveness for agnostics isn't just a side effect. It was the predictor of being agnostic. Even after accounting for how someone was raised, how spiritual they are, and whether your grandma guilted you into Sunday school or Hebrew school. So what does that mean? Well, if you find yourself regularly standing in the shampoo aisle, questioning your purpose in life while holding a bottle labeled Herbal Whisper, congratulations. That indecisiveness predicts that you might be an agnostic. It's not all bad, though. Agnostics do tend to be more open-minded, more pro-social, and less delusional about being better than everyone else. So sure, they're neurotic wrecks who can't make a decision, but they're pleasant neurotic wrecks. They might have a full-blown crisis whether to RSVP maybe to your party, but if they come, they'll bring snacks and compliment your cat when they arrive. And maybe that's the big takeaway here. Agnostics aren't confused atheists or closeted Christians. They're their own kind of messy middle, blended from equal parts of could be, not sure, and ask me again after I overthink it for 3 days. Anyway, if you're still wondering whether or not you believe in God, don't worry, you've got time. Eternity even. Probably. Maybe. I'm not sure. When we come back, the narcissist's prayer on Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, the classic script that those dysfunctional people you deal with follow, and how to deal with narcissists generally. Therapy Thursdays up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always The Last Show with David Cooper.
Did you just get rid of your gum?
Yeah, Gary, I got rid of my gum. It's time to tape the show. I'm here with I'm here with non-doctor, Mr. Gary Direnfeld. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary is a social worker, an expert in family and marital therapy, and he joins us every Wednesday night for Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary, hello.
And I had the pleasure of watching you spit out your gum.
You did. My therapist has been giving me a hard time about chewing nicotine gum.
Oh, okay.
And I lost my temper with him a little while ago. Because he's like, why are you doing it? You know, it's bad for you. And I'm like, can I have something? I gave up drinking. Okay, I gave up any kind of substance abuse. I go to bed every night and get a proper 8 hours. I don't procrastinate much on it anymore. I brush my teeth and floss every night. I don't party anymore. I have like such a structured life. My work habits are so much better. I have very little dysfunction in my life from where I used to have tons, like when I was separating from my ex 10 years ago. I've come so far. Can I have this one? Can I have this vice? I quit smoking, by the way. And
that's
what?
That's a lot of counter-transference right there, David. Did your therapist nail you on that?
He did. I'm like, I've pushed all these bad habits, and it's like my last one that I'm holding on to. It's my last self-destructive habit. And the research shows that nicotine gum is way better for you than smoking. The research also
but not healthy.
The research also shows it is quite bad for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was where I am.
So your therapist showed you love and you pushed back, huh?
Care, I would say, is a better way to describe the therapist.
Showed you care and you pushed back.
What, you love your patients, Gary?
Listen, I just feel like waxing psychoanalytically here for a moment.
Yeah. You love your clients. That's inappropriate, Gary.
I didn't say I love my clients. You are distorting that and throwing it back on me.
That's just the core tenet of Judaism right there. Distorting facts and throwing them back at their friends and family.
Oh my God, this is hilarious.
I learned it from my mother.
Anyways, thank you for throwing out the gum.
No problem. Our topic today, speaking of mothers. There's a great poem written by an Irish from Belfast, I guess a Northern Irish poet. Not a well-known poet, but she wrote something that is talked about so much on the internet for those dealing with narcissistic friends, parents, exes, siblings, dealing with narcissistic bosses. It's a really good poem, and I'm going to read it to you. I suppose it's from the perspective of a narcissist.
Yeah, go for it.
That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, it's not a big deal. And if it is, it's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it. It's the constant pushing of the moving of the goalposts that you get when
the shifting of responsibility.
First, it's like they deny it happened at all. Then they're like, it's not that bad. It's no big deal. It wasn't my fault. Well, I didn't mean it. And finally, if you corner a narcissist to the core of what they did, it's their last ditch or stitch effort. I never know which is the right one. Ditch. Yeah. It's, you're sewing something and it's your effort to put in that last stitch.
There you go.
It makes sense, but it's the last ditch effort to shift the blame onto the person they did something bad to. It's such a great poem because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you can watch in real time them follow the script.
Oh, absolutely. That is such a brilliant poem, if it's a poem, because it so reflects what people go through trying to deal with that narcissist. And it's crazy making. The person who is on the receiving end of that, it's like trying to nail down smoke.
Gaslighting.
Yeah, gaslighting. That was a great movie. People don't realize that term came from a 1940s movie where somebody is trying to steal a jewel from a woman, and he marries her to find the jewel, and he is continually turning down the lights in the house, which are lit by gaslight. And he's denying that the lights are getting dim. He's driving her crazy. And that's where we get the term gaslighting. So people should see that movie if they're dealing with this issue.
Yeah, I mean, Angela Lansbury's in it, Ingrid Bergman. I mean, it was a great,
yeah.
Good one.
Yeah. So much of my practice is working with one half of a separated couple where the one person is dealing with a narcissistic ex. And, the first challenge in supporting these people, they'll label their ex as a narcissist, yet treat them like they're, in a sense, a normal person. They'll plead, they'll beg, they'll cajole, they'll try to reason. These are all strategies that work for you and me, a relatively normal person.
Well, I'm abnormal, but yeah.
Well, but you've got it in check. These strategies don't work with a narcissist. They are not, by definition, normal. So my practice is all about teaching people skills. I don't use that word often, but I do hate those therapists who also see the same people that I would see and say, oh, how does that make you feel? Are you kidding me? We know how these people feel. Anger, scared, overwhelmed. We don't need to do a deep dive on their feelings. These people need skills, a different skill set for managing the narcissist. That's what I concentrate, or, I'm retired now, but that's what I did concentrate in terms of my delivery of service to support these folks. And when they adopted the skill sets, they had better outcomes.
Well, let's talk about the skill sets for dealing with a narcissist. I also want to take a step back. I want to kind of do things in reverse because we didn't cover it. The term narcissist gets thrown around so much now by non-experts, by people talking on the TikTok or the UTalk or whatever, the Facegram and the Instabook, all that stuff.
Oh, God.
Can you just give me a high-level definition when let's say someone comes into your practice? I know you're not practicing anymore, but retired Gary.
Sure. Here's the high level. Self-interest trumps any other interest. Period.
Are we talking about me here?
It's all about me one way or another. And the other feature is quite a lack of empathy. These are persons that have extreme difficulty putting themselves in the shoes of another to understand that other's experience. So it's all about me, and I can't even read the room where you are concerned.
We don't want to over-pathologize this, though. Sometimes, 1 out of 100 times, like maybe it's your birthday, maybe you just got a promotion. It's okay if it's about you occasionally. Doesn't mean you're a narcissist, but when it trumps everyone else all the time and leads to abusive behavior to try to enable it's always about me, that's the kind of person we're talking about right now.
Correct. I look in the mirror and I concern myself with my looks. We all do. That doesn't make me a narcissist. Maybe a little vain. Okay, I can live with that.
I mean, you got a stately beard, Gary. It's well trimmed. I can tell you care about your appearance.
I work that beard at the same trimmer I use on my dog. Anyways.
Really? Use the same? Oh, God.
Honestly. I know. I groom my dog and then I groom my beard. Anyways, TMI. Narcissism, we all have a bit of it. It's when it becomes our personality that's a problem.
It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. We're here discussing The Narcissist's Prayer, a wonderful poem, which I will restate when we come back. And we're discussing how to deal with a narcissistic ex, parent, friend, sibling, coworker, boss. The list goes on forever. I'm here with Gary Direnfeld, a therapist and social worker. We'll be back with more of whatever this is in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The Last Show with David Cooper.
This is fun, by the way. I'm really enjoying this banter.
We are back with Gary Direnfeld, a therapist, a social worker, someone who's worked in family and marital therapy. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, the world's only mental health-oriented radio segment intended for Thursdays that airs on Wednesdays. Our discussion, narcissists, dealing with them, and we are talking a poem by an Northern Irish poet, Dana Craig. Gary, welcome back.
Good to be back with you.
I don't often recite poetry on the show, but I'm going to say it again. It's called a narcissist. It's a tough word to say.
Yeah, say it 10 times fast.
A narcissist's prayer. It goes like this. That didn't happen, and if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, it's not a big deal. And if it is, it's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it.
Ugh.
Long pause.
It deserves the long pause. It's like, what? Wait. Oh. So my fallback when I'm working with people is to recommend, and when I use the word recommend, for me, it's actually required reading if you're going to work with me, 3 books by a U.S. colleague of mine, great guy. His name is Bill Eddy. So I'm 69. I believe he's older than I am. Tall, slim fellow, quiet spoken, brilliant. The 3 books by Bill Eddy I suggest to people, again, require. One is called BIFF. BIFF stands for Brief, Informative, Friendly, and Firm. This book is about how to manage those emails, texts, voice messages that go on and on and on, trying to tear a piece out of you that are filled with vitriol and just nonsense. And so brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Got your message. I can see that we don't agree on everything. Still not sure if you're coming Friday. Please let me know. Boom. That's it.
I like it. I feel like I got everything I need out of the title of the book.
Exactly. Don't get into the weeds. Don't be, suckered in and going down their rabbit hole. The second book is, so what's your proposal? Rather than you're a this and I'm a that and why do you want this and what, right? You never answer a narcissist's why. Because if, you give the why to a narcissist, then they're going to throw out everything you want because your why, in a sense, won't be good enough for them. So rather than why, we're going to ask what, where, when, and how. What's your proposal?
Interesting.
What is it you're seeking? And Bill, in his book, explains 4 responses. Yes, I accept it. No, I don't. I need to think about it. And let's drill down on that.
And it sort of takes the crosshairs off of you, like just
correct,
where the narcissist is trying to dig at you, and it makes them stop and think about what they actually want, what outcome they want. Even if the outcome's horrible, it does kind of shift the focus off of attack to outcome.
And sometimes people like the proposal. They may not like the person, but they may like the proposal once they've gotten past all the vitriol. And so you agree to it. I tell people, if you like a proposal, don't look happy about it, because to the narcissist, they're typically out to screw you over and make you feel miserable. And if you look like you've liked something, they're going to shift their proposal. So accept something you like with no enthusiasm. Yeah, fine, sure. Okay, I can live with that. Yeah, let's go. Okay. The third book is called EAR, E-A-R. Bill Eddy likes his acronyms. EAR stands for empathy, attention, and respect. I've had so many people where I've had to give critical feedback to. And it's honest, it's real, it's fact-based. And if they, react to it, you don't know what you're talking about, Direnfeld. I don't like that. Who says so? I kind of wonder, am I dealing with a narcissist that they can't self-reflect, can't empathize, can't take that critical feedback? I go to an EAR statement and it sounds like this: empathy. I see that my feedback really didn't land for you. Attention. I want you to know that I'm listening to everything that you have to tell me. Respect. I respect that you have a different perspective. Notice, I never apologized. I never said I was wrong. But by using an ear statement, empathy, attention, and respect, that person tends to settle down.
It's like saying thank you for the feedback to someone who just insulted you.
Yeah. And for me, there's a shift that goes on in my head because I've been doing this for so many years. I then shift to Biff, and so what's your proposal? And I will ask questions from a place of curiosity, getting that individual to question themselves versus me.
I love it.
So I know the skills, I use those skills and have better outcomes. This is what we want for the separated parents dealing with their narcissistic ex. You can do it. It is a skill. And like any skill, David, it takes practice.
I imagine.
Yeah. And the starting point is always recognizing, oh my goodness, I have been dealing with them as if they're normal, and they're not.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you're dealing with a narcissist, they're not playing with the same deck as you.
No.
They're not playing with fair cards. They've stacked the deck. The rules of their game aren't the normal rules, and so you got to really employ tactics like this.
Yes, they have a set of glasses that distorts anything that comes towards them and anything that comes out of them. And, once the person realizes that and starts deploying these strategies, the tension tends to go down. And it's not like you're going to change the narcissist, because you're not. You're not. Personalities are remarkably stable. Narcissists, they typically lack insight. They're not going to say, oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. I've been acting the fool.
I was an idiot all along. Like, sometimes I think about that. I'm like, what outcome is the narcissist looking for? Are they looking for somebody to say, oh, I was the idiot all along? Or when you're trying to interact with a narcissist, are you trying to get them to say, I was the idiot all along? No one ever says that.
I know. They're trying to break through to them. You're not going to break through to them. This is who they are. You have to learn to work with them. And once you realize, feed their ego without giving them what they want, you wind up having better outcomes. It's magical. Look, it's not perfect. Just to be clear, it's not perfect, but it's better than what most people have been doing.
What about when your boss is a narcissist? Is it the same thing, the exact same skills as like when your ex is the narcissist?
Well, it's a very similar set of skills, plus a few additional ones. You have to back up every conversation with an email or text affirming whatever has transpired. Because if there isn't a paper trail, there's no accountability. And, sadly, in a workplace situation, just like, many people have to separate and divorce when they're living with a narcissist, many people have to change jobs if they have a narcissist boss,
or teams, or
teams. And you may have to gather enough evidence and enough of those emails that eventually you can go over their head, if there's a head to go over to. But do know that'll always be World War III.
I do like that addition of keeping a paper trail. It's actually not a bad thing to do with friends, siblings, exes, like journaling what they said so that you're not crazy when they say that didn't happen.
No, you don't just journal what they said. Sorry for jumping on you. You got to send it to them and saying, here are my takeaways from today's meeting.
Yeah. Gary, here's my takeaway from today's meeting. I'm so glad you were here. Thank you for showing up. You can find more about Gary Direnfeld at yoursocialworker.com or check out his Facebook page. Just search Gary Direnfeld. Gary, thank you.
We got good countertransference here. That's great.
I have no idea what that means, but maybe we'll find out next week on Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. On a Wednesday. We'll do it on Wednesday. Next Wednesday. After the break, a yearly trend with growth of non-parents, people who never want children. We'll find out what that's all about in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Your nightly dose of unfiltered opinions and unexpected conversations. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Kids, if you want them, great. If you don't want them, also great. More and more people are choosing the thanks but no thanks route when it comes to kids. And turns out the number of Americans who never want kids has quietly doubled over the last 20 years. I'm here with someone who has researched that, and we're going to find out what it means for you and what it means for those of us who'd rather snuggle with their cat and get a good night's sleep than change a diaper. My guest is Dr. Zachary Neal. He's a psychology professor at Michigan State University. Zach, I'm so excited to talk about childlessness with you.
Hey, David, I am super happy to be here, and I am snuggling with my cat now. So that was a perfect segue to get us started.
Oh, you have your cat on your lap right now?
It is not in my lap. It is in the back of the room, totally asleep.
Love that.
Yeah.
I may have just committed a faux pas in your introduction here because, as I understand it, there is a distinction between being child-free and being childless. Is there a distinction? And if so, why does that matter?
I think there's a distinction. It's a distinction that we're trying to make in our research. We're trying to encourage other people to make it. So when we use the term child-free, we're talking about people that don't have kids and they don't want to have kids. And when we use the term childless, we mean people who don't have kids, but they would have liked to have kids. And there could be all kinds of reasons why they ultimately didn't. Maybe they have, fertility issues. Maybe they can't afford it. They haven't met the right person, but they really wanted to have kids and they couldn't. Child-free is really the group that we're especially focused on. These are folks that haven't got kids and definitely do not want them.
I really hope my overbearing Jewish mother is not listening right now. I am child-free. My girlfriend is child-free. I think she's in her early 30s. I'm in my late 30s. We're not going to do it, I promised my mom I'd wait until I was 40 to get a vasectomy, but I think that's a conversation for someone else. Let's get to your study. From the lens of child-free versus childless, knowing that I myself am child-free, you started asking non-parents questions. You started researching what the percentage of this was, and you've noticed a trend.
Yeah, there's a couple trends. So the term non-parent encapsulates a whole bunch of people. And we wanted to figure out what the trends were in these different kinds of non-parents. And the big trend we saw is in the people who say they don't want children. So back in 2002, about 14% of non-parents said, I don't want children. 20 years later, that had doubled to now 29%. And you might wonder, where are all these child-free people coming from? The same time that percent doubled, the number of people that said, I plan to have kids in the future went down by about the same amount. So we're seeing people who used to think, I'm thinking I'll have kids in the future, to I definitely don't want them.
Now, if you'd asked people about their sexual orientation many years ago, you would have self-described. You wouldn't have had a lot of folks telling you they were gay. If you'd polled people in the Middle Ages what their religion was, you'd get like 100% people saying they were the religion of the state. But secretly there were these atheists. Back then, secretly there were these people that were gay and not open because society was less tolerant. Do you think there's a shift, or do you think people are feeling more entitled now to just admit that they don't want kids because it's more accepted than maybe it once was?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question. And it's really tricky to pull apart. So it could be that there have always been a ton of people who didn't want kids. And in surveys in 2002, they're like, well, maybe in the future, we haven't made up our mind yet. And now that more people are open about being child-free, like a number of celebrities, people feel more comfortable saying, I don't want kids. And so what we're seeing is some combination of people who, a true increase in people who don't want kids and people who've never wanted them feeling more comfortable about disclosing that.
I'm just picturing a younger me. I would say I might be open to it because I would feel my mother breathing on my neck wherever I go. As someone who is happily child-free, why do you think more people are joining this club, or at least admitting that they are in this club, than they were 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, I think people are more open to admitting it because, the term is out there It's slowly gaining acceptance. It's certainly not widely accepted. There's still an expectation people want kids, they're going to have kids, but it's slowly gaining acceptance as something that lots of people are choosing to do. So I think that's one thing. When you ask people why they don't want kids, you get a whole bunch of different reasons. They'll point to, they'll gesture wildly at the state of the world around them. They'll point to politics and the environment and finances. But the majority of people, if you try and ask them why they don't want kids, they say, I just don't want kids. It's not my thing. I'm not interested.
I once got asked point blank by my therapist why I didn't want kids. Maybe I'm going to get too personal now. And I told her I didn't think I would make a good parent. Like, I didn't think I had the skills. I think I'm selfish in a lot of ways where it's fine being responsible for a child like that. I'm not selfish in ways that would make me incompatible with a partner or a pet. But I don't think I could give that much of myself to a kid. And I don't want to do that to a kid, having had a pretty lonely childhood myself. And as I said this to my shrink, she kind of started welling up. She's like, oh God, you have a negative view of yourself. But are the reasons just that people don't want them? Are they economic? Are they cultural? Are they psychological? I feel like mine, it's a bit of both of those things, psychological and economic. Like, what are some of the reasons?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to dig. So, if you ask people, they'll start off by saying, I just don't want kids. And you can try and probe and get deeper with it. And, sometimes people just haven't reflected on why they want. And so if you probe in these interviews, in these surveys, they'll come up with something. They'll come up with, I can't afford it. It's too expensive. Or
it is expensive.
I'd rather travel or something. It's definitely expensive. That's a good reason.
And it's bad for the environment. It's very bad for the environment, Zach. Every CEO of an oil company is somebody's kid.
Yes. Plenty of studies that suggest the worst thing you can do for the environment is have a kid. Take an international flight, not so bad. Drive a car, not so bad. Have a kid, you're killing the earth. So there's no shortage of reasons.
I mean, the captain of the ship that spills oil in the Arctic, that captain was somebody's kid.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No. So, and as you can see, there's loads of reasons, good reasons, I think, that people might not want to have kids. And so I think for some people it's one thing, for some people it's two or three. For a bunch of people, I think it's all of these things that just sort of in some amorphous soup, they don't want to get involved in the whole parenting thing.
Medical systems, financial systems aren't really built for the child free. Even the tax system, you get credits. Do you think society discriminates in subtle ways against those that don't have kids or don't want to have kids?
I think so. Especially the medical system. And in the United States, there's been some erosion of reproductive rights. You may have heard about some of these. It's getting harder to access birth control, harder to access abortion services, virtually impossible. You mentioned vasectomy a minute ago. Virtually impossible for women to get voluntarily sterilized. Easier for men, but still tricky. And so, the medical system assumes people want to have kids. And if you don't want to have kids, it's hard to make sure you don't.
Does your research look at whether people change their minds over time? Like in my early 20s, I genuinely wasn't sure. And as I hit my 30s, I became more and more sure.
Yeah.
Do people change their minds?
Yeah, I mean, people change their minds a lot. But, and it's tricky to say how often they change their minds because not a lot of research has followed the same people over a long period of time. But if we look backward on our data, we see lots of people in their 40s and 50s that are child-free now that said, I knew when I was a teenager. And so we don't think a ton of people are changing their minds.
Interesting. I'm here with Dr. Zachary Neal, a psychology professor at Michigan State University. We're talking about a growing trend of parents, non-parents. We're talking about a growing trend of people who want to remain child-free and how those numbers are increasing year on year. We'll be back with the discussion on whether people judge others for not wanting kids. Have you ever experienced that? A judgmental family member or friend pressuring you into having children? Lord knows I have. We'll be back in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Those who don't want kids. We're here to tell you not only is it okay, but also the trend of people who would like to be childless is increasing. Child-free, childless, oh no. I'm here with Dr. Zachary Neal, a psychology professor at Michigan State University. Zach, thanks for being here. Thanks for chatting to me about childlessness, child-freeness, child freedom.
There's so many words. Let's get into it, David.
Let's get into it. Okay, before the break, I was talking about societal judgment. I feel like every sitcom from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the mother was always pressuring the kid, their children to have grandchildren. I feel like it's deeply ingrained, this pressure from the older generation on the young generation to have kids. Do you find evidence of this when you interview people?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an American phenomenon. You see it throughout Europe. You see it throughout Asia. This norm called pronatalism, this expectation that people should want kids and they should have kids, is almost universal. And we especially see a bunch of stereotypes about people who say they don't want kids, and they're even stronger for women. So we'll hear that they're selfish and self-centered because they don't want kids, that they're too focused on their career. A big one is that they must have just boatloads of money and disposable income because they don't have kids, or that they hate children. And there is almost no evidence for any of these stereotypes being true of people who say they don't want kids.
What about coming from new parents on their peers who don't have kids? Like, I find there's a bit of arrogance from some of my friends who decided to have kids. Like, their childcare is somehow more important than anything I'll ever do. Maybe it's just anecdotal, but did you see any evidence of that? Or have you heard people talk about that? Just like not being treated as first-class citizens because they've decided not to have kids.
Yeah, I don't think it's anecdotal at all. And, part of the challenge is that once your peers have kids, there is almost no contact between the child-free world and the new parent world, because the new parent world does parent things and the child-free world doesn't. And so what we did is we asked people, how warm do you feel toward these other groups? And child-free people are cool with other child-free people, and child-free people are cool with parents. The difference is really parents really, really, really like other parents. And, I think that's what's driving what we see as stereotypes and these differences, is that parents really like other parents and everybody else is just sort of on their own.
So let's dig a little more into these stereotypes. Do any stand out for you as particularly offensive, like cruel, especially ones that are so common and they shouldn't be?
The one that comes up the most, and it's probably there's the most evidence that it's wrong, is this idea that people who don't have kids are going to wind up regretting their decision.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, my dad told me when I was older, I'd flip my political views to be more aligned with him once I started earning money. And I'm 38 and I had a decent career before I went into media and the technology sector. I didn't, I feel like that does get preached from older folks. It's like, oh, you'll regret it. Well, how do you know? You weren't child free. Like, you don't have you've got a sample size of one. And how do you know? Anyway, I'm getting angry here because this has been said to me.
Yeah, no, this is something that comes up a lot. People say they don't want kids. The retort they get is, you're going to regret it. You're going to change your mind. And so we looked at these big samples of people who did have kids, parents, and people who didn't, the child-free. And we looked just at the ones that were at least 70 years old. And we asked these older adults, looking back, would you change anything about your life? And everybody at 70 is like, there's some things I would change. I have some regrets. But the amount of regret the child-free people had was exactly the same amount as the amount the parents had. There was no difference.
One thing that really bothers me for those who have kids are like, oh, you need someone to care for you when you're older. You need to not be lonely when you're older. And I'm like, that's a selfish reason to have children. You're looking for free companionship. Also, your kids don't owe you taking care of you. If you're nice to them, they will, maybe. But yeah, I find that reason very strange. If that's your primary reason for having a kid, so you won't be lonely when you're older, that's kind of a cruel reason to have a kid, I think.
Yeah, that's a common one. So like you said, it's a kind of selfish reason to have kids if you're having them just to take care of you. And you hear this sort of, if you say you don't want kids, they ask, well, who's going to take care of you when you're older? Well, most people in their end of life period are taken care of by nursing home staff. Their kids don't come visit them. And so the people that will take care of child-free folks are the same people that are going to take care of parents.
Is there anything you wish the general public understood about child-free people? Like any misconceptions or anything you would want to say for those who are living in a world where everyone around them, all their peers have kids and they don't really understand or have any examples of friends who are child-free?
Yeah, I mean, when we started this work, we expected that there would be some differences between child-free people and the rest. So we looked at, age and income and education and personality characteristics, all these sort of demographic psychological properties. We could not find any differences. What we found was that child-free people are just like everybody else, except they don't want kids. And, I think that's probably what I'm hoping the world takes away from this is they're not really different kinds of people. They just don't want kids. And, I'm hoping the child-free people out there know there's an enormous number of you. And so if you don't want kids, you're not alone. This is really common and becoming more common. You're part of a huge crowd.
You are child-free yourself. You mentioned your cat earlier. My cat is my best friend, other than my girlfriend, probably. Do you secretly root for the child-free stats to go up? Like, are you invested in this a little bit secretly?
Now are you putting words in my mouth there, David? So I have a cat, but I didn't say if I was child-free.
Oh.
And this is something that comes up. So as a researcher...
And to interrupt you, I did put words in your mouth, and I apologize for it.
Not a problem. So this comes up, and it's something we think about it. We get asked a lot. My collaborators and I, we try and keep this sort of position of strategic ambiguity. Because if I say I'm child-free, then some readers of this research are going to think I'm coming at this with an agenda. But if I say I'm a parent or I say I'm childless, then my child-free participants are going to think I have no way of understanding how they think about the world and what they're all about. And so, we keep a neutral perspective. So I've got a cat. I'll definitely say that. I've got 2 cats, in fact.
All right. I like that you plead the fifth on this one, and I think it's for the best that you don't answer. You are approaching this from a neutral tone, from my opinion, and I apologize for putting words in your mouth and mishearing or making it up, but that's, I appreciate that answer on that one. What about the effect of these rising rates of people who are not having kids? Does it affect things like housing, education, even on like the way our cities are designed? We've been talking a lot about the individual, but on a societal level, if more folks are becoming child-free, won't there be changes?
Yeah, I mean, there might be some changes. So, education, mostly funded by taxes. Child-free people pay taxes too. And, lots of child-free people even work in the education sector. They work as teachers, they work with kids. So I don't think more child-free people are really going to affect those sorts of things. I know there's a lot of concern recently about, falling fertility rates, falling birth rates, this scare about a potential population crash. Increasing numbers of child-free people doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see falling fertility rates. You've got more people who are having 0 children, but we've also got people that are having more and more children than before. So we may see sort of stable fertility rates. It also could mean that, places like the United States, where more people are having no children, may increasingly depend on things like immigration for population growth.
Which wouldn't be such a bad thing. Zach, I appreciate the chat. Thank you for joining me. This was a great conversation.
I had a great time. Thanks so much for having me.
Dr. Zachary Neal is a psychology professor at Michigan State University. Here's what we'll cover after the next break. Do you find yourself being that awkward friend who invites themselves to other people's plans? Do you wish you had the courage to be that awkward friend so you wouldn't feel left out? Well, common wisdom would suggest that no one likes a 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th wheel. But when researchers looked into it, it turns out you're more welcome in other people's plans than you would think. Don't believe me? Well, we'll cover the science of inviting yourself to other people's plans in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. This is your nightly dose of chaos, confession, and questionable life choices. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Inviting yourself to someone else's plans. No one likes a third, fourth, or fifth wheel. Or maybe they do. I often jokingly do it with my friends. I'll call or I'll text. I'll say, "What are we doing tonight?" And it actually often works. I find myself invited places. But is inviting yourself annoying, or do people appreciate you being direct? I'm here with someone who studied that. They're a consumer behavior professor at West Virginia University. His name is Dr. Julian Givi. Julian, thank you for coming onto the show. Although you did not invite yourself, but thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, David, for having me and for inviting me as well. I'm excited to talk here about self-invitations.
My girlfriend, when she hears her friends are hanging out without her, she can get very upset about it. She can feel left out. And I'm like, why don't you just invite yourself? I know that your friends like you. I know it was just an oversight. But a lot of people, like her, normal people, unlike me, feel like self-inviting is some sort of social sin. Why is that?
Yeah, so certainly your girlfriend, she is not alone. So she seems to be a lot like a lot of our participants, and we have hundreds of them, if not thousands. So certainly she's not alone. And yeah, when it comes to these self-invitations, I think what really makes us feel so sort of bothered, right? Or kind of in your girlfriend's experience is this, we tend to think that people, when they're making plans, like when they have, they get together for things, that they've already considered inviting us and decided, oh, no, I don't want to invite this person, right? So from your girlfriend's perspective, right, part of the reason it probably bothers her so much is because she thinks, oh, my friends, why are they doing this without me? They must have thought about inviting me and said, no, I don't want to bring her. But in reality, actually, people just make plans without considering every single person that they've ever met in their lives, right? So that's sort of kind of part of the mismatch here that leads to this disconnect between people with plans and self-inviters.
I guess I know the reason I invite people over for dinner, for plans. It's so chaotic. Like if I texted my friend Bobby that day to ask him for a screwdriver, I might be likely to invite him to dinner because he's top of mind. When I make plans with people, I'm not going through my mental list saying, oh, I don't like that person, I'm not inviting them. It's just so random. So why should I think that other people, when they make plans, are more calculated? They're deciding whether to leave me out or not. Why? I don't think people, when they create plans themselves, have that intention, yet they think others have that intention when they're excluded.
Yeah, so it's certainly one of those many, an example of one of many findings in social psychology, where how we kind of react when we're in one position is very different than when we're in the other position. And really what we think it boils down to in this case, kind of the reason why you're thinking that these people are considering inviting you but decided not to, is because like it's a self-relevant thing. So it boils down to just being, people are very egocentric, right? We think about ourselves, right? And so just naturally we're going to think that we're kind of like the center of everyone's universe, right? And that, oh, if Bobby and Dale made plans, they definitely thought about Julian, right? But in reality, Bobby and Dale just probably saw each other and said, hey, want to go get ice cream, right? Without thinking about Julian or, even other people as well. So that's kind of part of it is this egocentric.
Well, they probably know I'm lactose intolerant. And if I show up, the whole hangout will stink, literally. Okay, let's get to the bulk of this, though. When we do invite ourselves, I feel like a lot of folks view that act as embarrassing or something we shouldn't have to do or something that's pathetic. And I guess I just have a very low view of myself. I assume I'm embarrassing, pathetic, and not liked. So I'm like, well, what do I care if I invite myself? It's almost a superpower, my lack of confidence. It makes me more confident in this situation. But what happens when people invite themselves? What do people actually think of an individual who invites themselves?
Yeah, so what we kind of find over and over again in our research is, again, you're not alone, where everyone is very hesitant to self-invite, whether that be, very directly saying, hey, I'm going to come with you guys, versus even just asking politely, like, hey, would you mind if I tag along? And what we find is over and over again is that participants in these studies, they just don't want to do that, right? They don't feel comfortable doing it at all. But in reality, what we also find is that for a lot of these kind of everyday activities, people are just like, no, hey, it's fine. It's fine if you ask to join, like, certainly. And of course, this isn't to say you should ask to join at every single event that ever comes along, right? There's certainly some boundaries that maybe we can talk about here. But for a lot of these sort of everyday things, right, when there's not a lot of planning and coordination going along, like, certainly our studies are suggesting that people can probably ask to join more than they currently do.
And I was telling Dr. Julian Givi, who's here to talk to me about the psychology of self-inviting. I was telling him before we started chatting here at the commercial break that he was not invited to come into bed with my girlfriend and I and watch White Lotus. I don't know why you asked. I'm kidding, of course. I just mean there's some inappropriate activities that we should never ask. But in general, like if I'm going to the movies or I'm having friends over for dinner, I would love to have you. You know, I haven't thought of you. And did you find that my view like that was what most people felt most of the time?
Yeah, 100%. And basically what we kind of, where we sort of draw the line, certainly you can imagine there's a lot of sort of ways you can slice and dice these things. But what we suggested is that, look, if it kind of boils down to this idea that people are really concerned about, the idea that, that the people with the plans had already considered inviting you but decided against it. Well, really, in cases where it's very apparent that people have thought about you and decided against it, you shouldn't self-invite. So some examples, right, would be at the extreme, like a wedding, right? Formal invitations, right, are sent out. And when people are planning a wedding, they're very clear, like, okay, these are the people we're inviting and these are the people we're not, right? So don't do it there. Or even something simpler, right? People, you kind of get hints in your everyday life, right, where, it might be something like a girls' night, right? Your girlfriend says, hey, I'm having a girls' night with my friends. Now it's kind of another signal to you, like, hey, we've considered who we want to invite. It's gonna be the girls, and don't come, right?
She tells me to get the heck out of there. She's like, look, you're not invited into our shared home for 3 hours that night. You gotta go. Right. But you gotta be straightforward with people about this stuff. And then at least then if they don't say anything, I think there's an in. But can we roll back to most people's horrifying, difficult, and probably most traumatic memories of being excluded? The dreaded childhood birthday party. Do you think some people's hesitance are formed at that age, like early experiences of exclusion and the embarrassment associated with it? Do you think that's where this comes from?
Yeah, certainly, definitely things from our childhood, right? We know that can, we can rely on those experiences to inform our later behaviors, right? And I think as we sort of talked about before, it's just this norm that exists in society, right? And what we kind of find in our research, and honestly research in lots of domains, is that people, they hate to be breaking norms when they're the one who's the breaker, right? When you're actually the person who's breaking their norm, you don't want to do that. But on the other hand, when you're just kind of on the other end of the spectrum, or the other side of the coin, I should say, you're kind of open to people breaking norms at times. So I think it's another kind of general demonstration of this general phenomena that, like, actors, if you will, don't like to break norms, but the people on the receiving end of those actors' behaviors are kind of open to norms getting broken.
I'm a weird one there. I'll break norms. I'll assist the group in breaking a norm. Like if someone has to break it to someone that they have to brush their teeth because they have bad breath, I'll go in there and do it. I'm willing to take the social hit for that. My last question here, if someone is not weird like me and they're more normal like my girlfriend, although she's dating me, so how normal could she be? What tips, if they want to be included in more stuff and advocate for themselves, knowing and having heard you describe that most times they're excluded, if they just asked, they'd be welcome? Any tips to sort of be more extroverted, to ask more? Is it really just as simple as, hey, talk to your friends when you hear that they're going somewhere, to just ask to join?
Yeah, so I think the first step would be 100% just consider, well, is it certain that they've already thought about asking and decided against it, right? And a lot of times it's not the case, right? Like if they're just going to the mall together, they probably didn't think about everyone that they could add. So think about whether they did or didn't, and chances are it's that they didn't think of you. And then secondly, just open up a little bit and then ask in a polite way. Certainly that's sort of the more appropriate way to do it, is ask them with the question as opposed to stating you're going to be joining them. But overall, that's what I would say. And just remember that the social psychology finding is that people don't ask to join as much as they should, and you should buck the trend.
You're more welcome than you think. Dr. Julian Givi is a consumer behavior professor at West Virginia University. Julian, it was a pleasure chatting with you today.
Yeah, you as well, David. Thanks.
All right, after the break, we continue the conversation about invitations, this time specifically weddings. We'll discuss with a sex communicator whether inviting people to weddings is rude. I myself think it is. This should be a fun one. Weddings. Why does anyone ever invite anyone to a wedding? That and some laughs in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Your nightly dose of unfiltered opinions Unexpected Conversations. Unexpected Conversations. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Ever been invited to a wedding? In my opinion, rude. Why does anyone ever invite anyone to a wedding? We're here to discuss whether going to nuptials is a good thing and what the protocol is around it. With Samantha Bitty, sexual health and consent educator. It's Sex Etc. Today, we will be highlighting the etc. portion of our discussion. Samantha, oh, what a pleasure.
Thank you, David.
Okay. And if one of my friends is listening or one of my girlfriend's friends is listening, we're not talking about your wedding. Your wedding's amazing. I'm so glad you invited us. But when anytime anyone invites me to a wedding, I'm like, why? Why? I got to sit there. The food's never good. I got to dust off my old suit. I never fit into it. You know, and then I got to sit. The speeches, Samantha, the speeches. Everyone thinks their own wedding's amazing and fun. Is it? I don't know. I'm a hater. I don't know what your opinion is. Where do you stand on weddings, Samantha?
Okay. So, as always, my answer is like, it depends. But default setting, I love weddings. Like, I love weddings. I hated my own wedding, but I love weddings in general. Even when I was a catering server, I loved catering weddings because I loved love. And I also love social dynamics. And so it's such a wonderful experience for me to witness everything that goes on in a wedding, like the best and the worst of us as humans.
The people watching is maybe the one saving grace here. The mixing of the families and the spouse and their families and their friends, and especially if you're not close with them, you're just like observing this weird social dynamic that's only ever going to exist for 3 hours or 5 hours. Please, only 5 hours. Please, not 8 hours. I mean, okay.
And then there's always like the misfit table, like the table of people where it's like we had to invite them. Nobody knows each other. Maybe they've got one common thread, which is us and whatever. And that's like the event itself. But in general, I love the concept of weddings because I love the ways in which we invite our communities into our partnerships. Like, it's a very collectivist thing in my, like, as it relates to like my values and principles around love and relationship. And I just, public declarations of commitment and adoration is just something that I enjoy and endorse. And with great power comes great responsibility. And so weddings can either be something that feels like it's for the guests, or it can feel like it's something for the couple or the couple's like parents or whoever it is that's like paying the bill, Yeah. So I, in theory and in concept and in principle, I love weddings, whether that's just two people at City Hall, or like a friend of mine is a photographer and she has a studio, and a lot of folks get married in her studio, and it's just the most beautiful private thing. I love it at its most private, and I love it at its most public and grandiose. Like, put a photo of y'all in the newspaper. Like, we're getting married. I love it.
To the point where with the misfit table or the weirdo table, that's my table. Just side note, always. I always find myself there. Can't imagine why. It's interesting you mentioned the family, because when I was getting married, my parents were going to foot the bill. I was young, and whatever they were helping with, it wasn't worth it. And so we eloped. Because I didn't want to fork out tens of thousands of dollars at like 25 or 26. I didn't have that kind of money. So we eloped. So I kind of practiced what I preach here, because I just had 3 people at my wedding, and they were new friends. I was living in a new city. I had been there for 6 months, and they were people I had just met. 2 of them are close friends now. 1, I can't stand them, whatever. But yeah, what about long weekend weddings? Those I hate, because it's like, it's so rude. Like, in Canada, there's July 1st. In the US, it's July 4th. It's like, I want that extra day off of work. I don't want to schlep on the long weekend.
So do you mean that the wedding takes place across several days, or do you mean it's on one of the days of the long weekend and it's disrupting your long weekend?
Both are rude, in my opinion.
Okay.
Fine, destination weddings. Can we agree there, that is rude?
It depends. And I I want to offer to you this perspective about being invited to a wedding, which is that there are people in your life who are in love, presumably. That's why they're doing this union. And they want to invite you into that love, to witness it, to be part of it.
Why?
I find being invited to a wedding to be such an honor. Like, even if someone messages me on the day of their wedding being like, someone canceled last minute, you want to come to my wedding? I am not offended. I'm like, so glad I made the cut. Like, yes, I will be there. But I'm also someone who has like a million pairs of shoes and like plenty of dresses and outfits that literally collect dust. And so I'm ready at any moment to be invited to a wedding. So anyone listening wants me to invite me to their wedding. I also love hosting weddings and seeing weddings. Like, that's just so fun.
I emceed my brother's wedding, and I was good at it, I gotta say. But I was still drinking at the time, and he made me promise that I wouldn't drink until I was done emceeing. So it was dangerous. But yeah, I guess that was fun. Yeah, I guess some of them are fun. I've been to a couple good, cool, fun weddings. I guess Miranda, my girlfriend, says she hates that I'm a misanthrope, and she's like you. She loves weddings. But I find dancing uncomfortable. I don't like sitting there. I don't like listening to long speeches. I don't like anything. Why is anyone friends with anyone, Samantha?
I think any forced socializing is something that stresses me out. Like, I will identify the fact that like, I don't want to make small talk. I don't necessarily want to dance if I don't like the music. Like, all of those things are true for me as well. I definitely started to be invited to more weddings once I got sober, but I'm also not someone who has the types of friends where I'm at a wedding every weekend. Like, you know how there's like some people where in their 20s, they're at a wedding every weekend. And then there's like a window where they're just at baby showers. And then they're in like the 30s range of weddings every weekend. And then it's baby showers again. I don't have that.
No.
We don't, I say we, like that's not a thing. But I wish I was invited to more weddings. Not necessarily more baby showers, but I still will get down with a baby shower because I love the spirit and intent of welcoming a new person into my community and into my life. So that's how I experience it. That's how I perceive it. I feel like weddings just have such a range, right? Where some of them are like all last day, like, oh, we're going to do the ceremony here. And then there's a window period of like 3 hours where there's nothing. And then now we're having this other thing. And then there's a brunch the next morning and all the whatever. If you do not want to be invited to weddings, my advice to listeners and you, David, like you said, stop being friends with people.
Yeah.
Stop being
charming. It's not worth it.
Stop being a charming guest. Yeah. Stop being cool. And then people will stop inviting you because people invite you because they're like, I want this cool person at my wedding.
Maybe that's the problem. I'm not cool. And so anyone who thinks I'm cool is not cool at all. No, anyone who invites me to a wedding is probably my girlfriend's friend. Let's be honest. Don't date, I think, but no, would do well to listen to your advice. I do like having a strong sense of community. And if I look at it through that lens, they're not such a bad thing. Like, I like having friends over for dinner, and I like showing up to people's stuff. And I like, being there for people and all that great stuff that comes with community. If weddings are building that, then fine, Samantha.
I hear you. And I think any experience can be improved by a shift in our perception. And also just saying, like, what can I bring to this situation as opposed to what am I taking away? I like to be comic relief. Like, I'm the person at the table who is sober and is the comic relief. I will regale people with the tales of my single sober life. Like, I don't have a plus one. Like, I'm very much that wedding guest who's maybe dressed a little bit too slutty. Like, just find your niche and just, suit up and show up.
All right. I'm the guy sitting on a chair in the corner while my girlfriend's having fun on the dance floor, just staring off into the abyss. That's me, Samantha. That's who I am. That's my archetype.
And she chose you.
She chose me. Samantha, what a pleasure. So you can find Samantha at Samantha_Bitty on Instagram. Samantha Bitty is a sexual health and consent educator. I said your name one too many times here on the outro. But Samantha, thank you for being here.
More is more, David. Thank you.
After the break, we'll talk pay transparency. Is it generally good to know how much each of your coworkers make? I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Some people say pay transparency, knowing what your coworkers make, makes things fairer, while others say it just makes things awkward around the office. What are your opinions on this? And what does the research on the topic say? Is it helpful to know how much your coworkers make? Or does it just make you hate Julia in accounting more than you already do? I'm here with someone who's researched this. His name is Boris Maciejovsky. He's a behavioral science researcher at the University of California, Riverside. Boris, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for reaching out and having me. Well, we got into this research expecting what you expected, that it's kind of like nice to know what everybody is making, and it's kind of like fair and transparent, and it motivates people. And there's a lot of research suggesting that if you reveal information, it's kind of motivating, right? You know where you are in the ranking order, and people push harder. And that was kind of the starting point. But surprisingly, we didn't find that, or at least not across the board. We found positive effects of this motivation, kind of boosts for like high-ranking individuals, but then we found the exact opposite at the lower spectrum of the performance scale.
Having previously worked in the high-tech sector in San Francisco, and I also managed people during my career, so I negotiated salary with incoming candidates and stuff, I found pay was a lot more based on your negotiating skills when you started, and not necessarily tied to your performance. And if it was tied to your performance, it was still pegged percentage-wise against your starting salary. And how good you are at negotiating salary, it doesn't inform how you perform, in my opinion. And so I think it's really good for everyone to know the pay of your peers, because then you can like do something about it. You can mention that it's unfair and everything. That's what I've always thought, anecdotally, having hired maybe 4 people and negotiated my own salary maybe 5 or 6 times. What did you find? What did you find when people know what their peers make?
Well, first of all, there used to be, or in many cultures, there's a taboo about kind of talking about salaries, right? And so coming from this angle, it's kind of similar to what you're saying. It might be beneficial to kind of just reveal it out in the open. So everybody knows that, and nobody has to kind of feel awkward about revealing it or not revealing it. And so, so we thought as well, like it's good not only to know what others are making, but it has this positive effect. But weirdly enough, it's not universally true, at least in our study. And we've done like 4 kind of conceptual replications of the same idea to kind of really kind of hone in on this effect. And it's true at the very top. And I should say it's not just the top, it's also like meaningful kind of benchmarks, right? Being in the top 3, or having a salient kind of like cutoff, like close to the position 50 is different than if you're ranked 73rd or something, right? So anything that's kind of like a standout number or a standout subset of like top 3, for instance, that's kind of different from kind of the lower ranking positions psychologically, it seems.
Makes sense. That taboo, in my opinion, only serves the employer, because they can afford to pay good people less if there's a lot of secrecy around salary. I worked in tech. The salaries were all pretty good. I haven't seen it at the lower end. What do you observe in practice here for the average person when they find out what their peers make?
So we break it down in terms of like, because we have this non-uniform effect. So at the top, it's basically if you learn about the benchmark, like you're saying in tech, you know kind of like what the industry pays, what an outside offer would pay. Then people feel entitled to a number like that and maybe a little higher. Weirdly enough, if you're like ranked lower and you find out about the outside benchmark, you're not tempted to demand as much. You're actually shading your expectations lower. And so from a managerial perspective, it kind of suggests that uniform kind of transparency policies might not be the perfect way to go about, because you have this kind of negative effect for lower ranking like individuals in the company. And so maybe a combination of different kind of benchmark statistics, kind of framings might be more beneficial in those situations.
And when you say it's negative, does that mean it hurts morale? Like if entry-level employees who aren't making a ton find out what their peers make and one of them makes slightly more, can that demoralize them? Like what are these negative effects that you mentioned?
So This is speculative because we're kind of like trying to dig into those effects and have a follow-up study on that. But potentially you're spot on, meaning that there is this maybe decoupling effect, this kind of disengagement effect, demotivating effect for people who are lower on the ranking scale, because now they know where they actually are and how they stack up to their competition. And it might make them actually withhold information, potentially be like you indicated earlier, kind of reflective of kind of these divides that you feel less connected to others, you feel less likely that you like them, that you share information, that you collaborate with them, that you are effective in team settings. So all these negative effects could potentially happen, but we haven't demonstrated them yet. But the first instance is that such transparency in pay information might actually have potentially downstream negative effects for those people at the lower end of the distribution.
This throws a wrench in sort of the more modern movement of companies being more transparent, publishing their bands. If you get promoted into a certain position, your pay has to be in that band. You can't go below it. You can't go above it. This kind of, it seems like in some industries, things are going towards more pay transparency. And what your research suggests is this may not be a good thing. Is this a surprising finding to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We thought, like you're saying, like if fairness kind of should be the driving force why this is beneficial and allowing people to negotiate the salaries, feel good about the salaries because they know what everybody's making. It's kind of indicating that that's what people expected and what we expected, but it seems it's not really true across the board, at least.
So tell me more about the specific study. You mentioned 4 different categories or 4 different experiments you did. Walk me through some of them.
So it's a combination of like hypothetical experiments and also like performance-based experiments where people actually had to solve different kind of quizzes and puzzles and were ranked according to performance. And we then gave them basically information about what somebody with a similar rank typically demands in those kind of situations. And if they're close to the top or close to a meaningful standard like top 3, they basically demand pretty much the same what others are demanding at that position. But if you're way lower, below average and near the bottom of the distribution, you tend to actually demand less what others are actually demanding.
So I think pay transparency is ultimately a force for good, but I guess with your research, if you're going to blab about it at work, you should be mindful with whom you're blabbing it to and kind of what salary bands might be expected to be talked about. You need to be more subtle about it. You need to be more nuanced about it. Would that be a fair takeaway from what you've uncovered here?
Absolutely. I think for the managers, it needs to be clear that those kind of effects, psychological effects, are not the same at the top and at the bottom of the distribution. And for people who are closer to like the bottom of the performance distribution, maybe different pieces of information are more beneficial than just throwing out the numbers and basically saying, here's what people at your position are making, and here's what you can expect to make outside. Maybe packaging the information in a different way, maybe combining it with other kind of things, maybe more intangible things, less based around performance standards and numbers per se, might be more beneficial to kind of have this negative, to prevent the potential negative effect of demotivation that is kind of like lurking in our data, right? Because why would people demand less than others? It must be the case, or it might be the case, that they feel like less entitled. And that's kind of one of the psychological mediators that we identify, is they feel less entitled and less deserving of what others are making because of their relatively low performance. And so helping them in other ways and maybe not sharing that information might be beneficial for them to feel better and to be more motivated.
Boris, I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for sharing your research with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Boris Maciejovsky is a behavioral science researcher at the University of California, Riverside. That is the show. Thank you for listening to it. Do check us out online where you can stream any parts of the show you missed as a podcast. Our website is www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com, lastshow.pizza. And there you can find out details about our podcast and our social media accounts. Give us a follow. I'm David Cooper. This was The Last Show.